Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the best Baldur's Gate 3 characters on a tier list. So this is just going to be an overall ranking based on everything that we see of them in the game. And first off, we have Shadowheart, one of the best characters I think in the game because she has really well fleshed out story if you go either the good route or the bad route. And I think it's really interesting. After playing the game a few times, you get to really see a different side of these characters as you play through it. And I think that Shadowheart does a really good job. Now, I do have some people in the comments hating on Shadowheart sometimes, but I think that she's a pretty great character overall because she just brings a lot to the party on either a good playthrough or an evil playthrough. And she's a cleric, which is kind of by the Dungeons and Dragons standard, someone that you want to have on your side at all times. So she's pretty integral to the plot because she has the astral prism that she was sent to retrieve. So I think Shadowheart's definitely an S tier character. All of the origins are going to be really good. I'll give my points on why. So we got Gale next, who is actually one of the best origins to play as, because if you play as Gale, you get a bunch of exclusive content. You get Tressum Cat at your camp, and on top of that, you can also ascend Gale and then get level 9 spells, which is pretty cool. But also, Gale as a companion, he's pretty funny. He's dorky, but also egotistical. He's a wizard, so he loves to learn things, and it's interesting if you play as someone like a sorcerer who inherits their powers from their birth, whereas he had to work hard to get his. Even though he does kind of resemble like a sorcerer in the lore, like he does have a really good understanding of magic even without having to learn it like a wizard. But Gale himself, a very integral character to the plot. It feels like him, Shadowheart, Astarion, and Wyll are kind of the most tied to the plot, I feel. Lae'zel as well, because she's Gith, and they have a big involvement in Baldur's Gate 3, but I'll get to them in a moment. Next, we have Astarion, who's another really great character, Silver Tongue Devil, and he's a really funny guy. Neil Newbin is a voice actor, did a phenomenal job. Astarion has some of the most dialogue in the game, too, because he's just a very chatty guy. So I think that he's great. He's a vampire, so he does have some vampiric traits that some people don't like. I actually was reading a thing about how some people will, every playthrough that they have will take him out right at the start because he pulls that knife out at us, and some people don't forgive him for that. But hey, like if you given his history, like he was in service to Cazador for 200 years, pretty much being tortured the whole time, and he's finally able to go out in sunlight, and because he's got the Mind Flayer parasite, so he's a little bit spooked, and obviously that's going to cause a little bit of offensiveness to others. So yeah, I think Astarion's a great character development too. If you go the good route, you get to see why he is the way that he is. Now in Act 1, he does oftentimes disprove on your actions, like if you help someone out. The reason that he disproves when you help others is he was not helped for 200 years. So I can understand that him coming from that once you see his full story develop. Also, if you go an evil road, he does get a really nice buff and makes him a very powerful monk. So yeah, Astarion's great. Next we got Lae'zel. I think it's hard with all these companions. Like Lae'zel is a really great one. I just don't like her to the same level as I like the other companions. I don't know what it is. She's very rough and abrasive at the very start of the game. She's scared though. Like she has a Mind Flayer parasite, and her entire like upbringing. She's only like 20, I think, years old in the game. Her entire like Gith hate Mind Flayers, and she was on a journey to get ahead of a Mind Flayer. For Blackheath, and that's when this whole story went down. So you can kind of excuse her for being kind of rough at the start. And she has a pretty good character development. Some people will just not give her a chance, though, and that's kind of sad because I do think she's a really great character. I'm going to put Lae'zel in the A tier. I could move her up to the S tier, but I'm trying not to stack the S tier too much, and I know that I will end up, but she's a really great character, so A tier. Next, we got Wyll, the Blade of Frontiers, and he's, I would say, one of the most underrated characters, I would say. Now, if you keep Karlach and Wyll on the same team, he does end up becoming like a half tiefling with horns, and some people really don't like that. But Wyll himself has a very high power level before the game starts. Like, he was able to fight off a whole dragon and then like 26 or something really high level enemies all at once, and he could summon hellhounds and things like that. So he himself is really strong, and I would say it's tough. Like he's got a really good backstory. When you meet him, he's like the goody two shoes. I think what's interesting is if you play as Wyll, you can go either good route or evil route, because if you go the evil route, you have to take out Karlach, and then it's not like you're losing anyone if you go the evil route. So he's actually got an interesting, if you want to play as a good character too, he's also kind of like very important to the plot. I would say Will's S tier. He's definitely underrated. I don't think a lot of people would put him in the S tier, maybe just the A tier, but I'm going to put him there because he's grown on me. I see his story develop into Act 3, and just the stuff that he's been through, I think that he's a really well-defined character. Next we got Karlach, and she's awesome. She's just a firecracker, full of energy. She's funny. She has some of the most emotional moments in the game, and I think one of the most emotional moments in any video game ever. In Act 3, when you defeat Gortash, listen to her rant. It is something else. It really did blow my mind what a video game could make me feel. For that, I got to put her in the S tier. I've never felt like that much, I guess, care for another character whenever you see their actual backstory and how it affected them. Really great character development too. I think Karlach is definitely an underrated character, so I gotta put her in the S tier. So out of all the companions, they're all great. Lae'zel could be S tier, but I'm gonna put her in A tier just because I know I'm gonna put a bunch of others. I guess there's another origin. We got the Dark Urge. I want to put the Dark Urge in the S tier. Great character. Probably the best to play as if you're looking to do a second playthrough, because you get a ton of extra content, and the Dark Urge is way more tied to the plot than Tav is. So if you play as just a regular origin that you create yourself, the Dark Urge actually gets a much greater tie into the plot. I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, in Act 3 it gets pretty intense. So I had Siri going off there, and yeah, the Dark Urge is a very powerful origin because you get a nice cloak that turns you invisible. So very powerful. I would say the Dark Urge is the best probably to play through if you're going for a second playthrough. Gale is a close second. He's also great. Next we got Halsin. I really like Halsin, but his quest line is kind of funny, and like in Act 2 you get this quest line you got to complete, and then he just feels kind of useless after that. Not useless, but he just doesn't have as much involvement in the plot as some of the other characters. So I like Halsin, but I just feel like there's more to want from this character. So I'm going to put him in the A tier as well as Lae'zel, because he does have a good story. In Act 1, it's kind of weird. He's this hyped up as this big strong druid, and then we have to go save him from goblins. So yeah, Halsin's good, but I feel like there's just a bit missing with the character after Act 2. He just feels like he's just there. So for that, I'm going to put him in the A tier. Next, we got Minthara, and I think Minthara is also an S tier character. You used to only be able to get her on an evil playthrough, but you can now get her on a good playthrough. But she's evil to the bone. She's like way worse than Lae'zel, and she's ruthless with it, like absolutely ruthless. She comes from nobility, so she does have a bit of that going on with her, but I think that she's one of the funniest. Minthara is the funniest person I know. If you get her at the circus, she tells a pretty funny joke, and she's actually an interesting character. Like, if you play as Origin Gale, she believes in Gale like a lot. But if you don't play as Origin Gale, she just craps on him the whole time. So, a pretty funny interaction between her and some of the other characters in here. So, I think she's one of the greatest characters. If you've never done a playthrough with her, I highly recommend grabbing her, because she might surprise you with how brutal and blunt she is, but it's also a lot of fun. So yeah, S tier. Next we have Jaheira. Jaheira comes from Baldur's Gate 2, and I would say that she is a really well-defined character. Unlike Halsin, she actually has a pretty big development in Act 2, and into Act 3 you can go meet the Harpers, and there's some pretty cool interactions. You can actually become a Harper in the game. So I think that Jaheira is actually very underrated by people. Druids themselves are a really powerful class too, and she's regularly a land druid, and Halsin's a moon druid. But I'm going to put Jaheira up in the S tier. I know I've really haven't filled out the rest of the tiers that much, but we'll get there. We're just starting with such heavy characters, so this is the worst tier list I've ever done. Everyone's going to the S tier. Actually, I might put her in the A tier because she does have a lot of content. I feel like there could be a little bit more, but again, she's one of those that you get in Act 2, so it just makes sense that you're not going to get a full preview of them. Next, we got Minsc and Boo, and this is a 2-for-1 deal. Minsc is I would say the funniest character in this game. He's just a big goofball, voiced by Matt Mercer, so some Dungeons and Dragons fan may know him in Critical Role. I'm putting Minsc in the S tier because you do get him really late. I wish we got him earlier, but it makes sense in the plot why we get him so late. But he makes up for it in being hilarious in the time that we got him. He has some really great interactions with all of the crew, and even with your own character. I found that his dialogue was just overall funny. Like, anytime I talked to him, anytime he piped up, it It was always something that made me laugh, so I have to put him in the S tier. Next, we got the Emperor. I'm going to put him a little bit lower because he is actually a really well-defined character. And I think what's interesting about the Emperor is if you side with him, he seems more trustworthy. But the moment that you side against him, he just immediately is like, screw you, I'm going to the absolute. So for that, I have to put him down a little bit. I'm going to put him in the C tier. I also just don't like squids that much. So that is a little bit of a play in that, but he does manipulate the character, so I have to put him a little bit lower because he is lying to them with his appearance at first, and yeah, he's not a good guy. But if you need help saving the city, he's there, I guess. But it's interesting how they really split out his character, and I think that's a pro for him, is being able to have a character that's so like different depending on your choices. So I think they did an amazing job with the Emperor. I just personally don't like him. Next, we got Raphael, and he is the devil. He's honestly an interesting character. I really enjoyed whenever he showed up because he's got a very interesting feel to him. Like whenever he's around, you feel like a bit of dread for the characters because you don't know what his great plan is. And you have a pretty cool interaction in Act 3 whenever you go visit the House of Hope. So I think Raphael is actually a really good character, but I'm going to put him in the A tier because the voice acting was so well done. And a big thing, make sure you go and fight him in Act 3, because this is the most Disney villain thing I've ever seen in my life. And it would be a shame to play through Baldur's Gate 3 and not get to experience that. So, Raphael singing, easy A tier. Next, we got Mizora, who's the reason that Wyll is the way that he is. He signed a deal with her to save his city. So, shouts out to Wyll. Mizora is kind of a jerk. Now, it's funny because, like, the devils and these characters in Baldur's Gate 3 kind of act like lawyers. They got very distinct contracts that have lots of fine print that totally screwed some people over. So, Mizora, you do have to save her, and then that leads to Wyll getting the Infernal Rapier. So, she is useful, and she can stick around camp, and you can actually attack her, and she won't care. So, yeah. If you watch any of my build guide videos for Baldur's Gate 3, you'll see me attack her all the time because she's just right there and she don't mind. I'm gonna put Mizora in the B tier. You can also do some dirty things with her, and I don't recommend doing that because it's just wrong, definitely wrong. Next we got Zevlor, and Zevlor's a pretty decent character. It actually broke my heart whenever you go an evil route and you attack the goblins. I'm gonna put him in the B tier because he's kind of like a rough and tough dude. But it broke my heart whenever we go to attack the druids and just seeing him, oh, you've led them here. That was tough. So I'm going to put him in the B tier. He's a pretty solid character. The tieflings are awesome. Next, we got Alfira, the bard. And don't put her near this guy. Yeah, if you play as the Dark Urge, it's like literally impossible. She'll end up... You can save her, but you have to hop through like hoops. I think that Alfira is pretty great of a character. Short-lived if you're playing as Dark Urge, but I'll probably put her in the A to B tier. She doesn't really do much. Like, I feel like she could have been a potential ally on the team. Like, you could have had her as a companion because there was no bard amongst the team, and she is like the most notable bard in the game. So she could go A tier, B tier. Just really depends how you view this character. I think she was great, but I don't know if she was good enough to go into the A tier. Like, she didn't have a legendary appearance like Raphael did. So I guess by that standard, I'm going to put her in the B tier. Next, we got Roland, and I think that he's kind of a jerk, and he really wasn't that helpful. The Sorcerer's Sundries is where you can find him in Act 3, but you encounter him all throughout the game. Gale and your player character can kind of beef with him because he thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. I'm going to put him in the F tier, actually, because screw this guy. He's not that nice, and he's got a big ego that I think ties him down. Now, next we got Scleratus Fell, and I'm also going to put him in the F tier. If you're the Dark Urge, he's kind of your homie. But if you go the good route as the Dark Urge, which I highly recommend doing because it's a super rewarding playthrough, he's like, screw you then. And he's kind of just a jerk. So I'm going to put him in the F tier. You can, if he shows up in a camp, you can attack him. And it's fine. He doesn't mind. So he's like, yes, good stuff. That's awesome. Keep it up. So yeah, I'll put him in the F tier. Next we got, I always get these names confused. Wolbrin Bongle and... this one's evil. He hates the gnomes and he wants to take them out. I'm going to put him in the F tier. I can't think of the name. Wolbrin Bongle, he's tied to the windmill, and you can accidentally let him go flying and he ends up dying, which is sad. But I'm gonna put him in the C tier, or B tier. He doesn't deserve what he went through. I actually don't think I like the character's okay. Like you just feel bad for him more than anything. So I'll put him maybe B tier to C tier. Yeah, we'll go B tier. Next, we got the goodest boy Scratch. It's a dog, and you can pet the dog. Can I pet that dog? Put him in the S tier. It's inevitable. You knew when you were coming to Scratch that he was going in the S tier. You knew it. He is just a good boy. You can summon him in. You can throw the ball. There's actually a lot of dialogue, which is kind of sad, but also interesting, that if Scratch were to die somehow, all the companions have a comment whenever you throw the ball. And Minthara, as usual, is the funniest. She's like, I actually miss the dog. You all think that I killed the dog. I miss him. And then she'll also, if you throw the ball, she also is, the dialogue I don't think is in the game, but it's in the files. There's also dialogue that she'll tell Withers to catch the ball. So, again, Minthara being Minthara, she's funny. But back to Scratch. The goodest boy. He actually has a little bit of a quest line in Act 3 too, so interesting. Highly recommend having Scratch around. Next, the Owlbear Cub. Again, since Scratch is here, I have to put the Owlbear Cub here. It's cute. You can have it in your camp, and it's a cool thing it's a cool little, I guess, Owlbear Cub to have around. So, yeah. Don't have to say much. They're cute animals. They're going in the S tier. Next, we got the Drider, and you can see his little spider eyes on his face. Gross. I'm putting him in the F tier. Now, it's interesting. If you're doing a good playthrough, you can fight him. If you're doing an evil playthrough, I did on my second playthrough, you can actually follow along with him through the Shadowlands. So that's really cool. That he's kind of like depending on how you play through, depends how he is. Next, we got Lae'zel Thorm. I'm going to put him in the C tier. It's not a big involvement in the plot, but when you meet him, you can kind of get him to drink himself and explode. It's gross. I'm going to put him in the C tier, though. He's short-lived. Rest in peace to the goat of just being a big fella. Then we have all of Thorm's children. I don't like this one, the gold one. You can actually do a little bit of a cheese by getting a bunch of gold and then reverse pickpocketing and then attacking her with using her weapon on someone else, I guess. She's just not a very, somewhat memorable because she's covered in gold and obsessed with it, but same with the surgeon. His Ketheric Thorm's kids aren't super great characters, I would say. Balthazar is a little bit better. I'm going to put him into the C tier. For a villain, he's decently good at being a villain. I just feel like there's other villains that are done much better, so I need to have this balance a little bit more. We're heavy on the S tier, and he doesn't really do much outside of Act 2, so there we go. Elminster next. Elminster comes up and he's like, Gale, you need to explode. And that's really it. He does show up later, but I want to put Elminster in the B tier. He's level 20 wizard. Very powerful, and he's a well-known Dungeons & Dragons character. And he's kind of like a mentor. It's interesting. He's kind of like Mistress Chosen, similar to Gale, but older, obviously. But it's funny, he shows up and he's like, Gale, you gotta blow up, man. It's like, what? Whenever I first encountered Elminster, I was like, what is going on in this game? I think he's pretty funny, though. Wizards are always interesting characters in types of lore, so yeah, I'll put him in the B tier. Next, we got Ketheric, and Ketheric was a really well-done villain. I would like to put him in the S tier. You know what? Maybe I will. I wish that he had a bit more involvement in the story. Ketheric is voiced by J.K. Simmons, also known as J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man universe. J.K. Simmons is an incredible voice actor, and he did a great job here. What's cool about Ketheric is he's a villain, but you can kind of convince him to be good at a certain part in Act 2. I wish that he had more involvement in Act 3. If we didn't end up actually taking him out at Act 2, it would have been cool to have a bit more of him in Act 3. And also, I read somewhere that there was potential that he was going to be a recruitable companion after Act 2. I think that would have been really, really cool. But I understand the budgetary reasonings why they probably didn't go that route. So he's the easy S tier. I was going to put him in the A tier, but I think of all the villains that he is probably the most interesting because he's got a lot of tie-ins with Isabel and the main plot that happens in Act 2. I just wish we got more of him. Gortash. I would say Gortash is a pretty decent villain. Gortash and Orin, they're both pretty weird. You can side with Gortash, which is interesting, and then you can choose to betray him or not if you want. I think he's a pretty solid villain. I'm not going to put him in the into the likes of Raphael as a villain. Raphael could actually probably move up to S tier as well, but I'm going to put him in the B tier. As for a villain, he looks like the protagonist from Final Fantasy 15, but a lot older. He talks about himself like he's the hottest thing on the block, but he's kind of just looks like an old fella. I'm going to put him in the B tier. Next we get Orin, which is a pretty solid villain overall. I would probably say Orin is A tier, because she's actually one of the few villains that I'm like, ugh. Lady D from Resident Evil is voiced by the same voice actress that does Orin, so you may recognize the voice, iconic, and she's just scary. So yeah, she I feel like she's more of a villain feeling character than Gortash. Of the chosen three, Ketheric obviously the best. Orin's pretty solid, but Gortash could go A tier too. Like, he's not bad, but I just feel like his character isn't as evil feeling as the others. Next we got Withers, the OG. Withers is pretty good. I would say he's A tier. Don't want to spoiler alert, but he's a pretty important character in Dungeons and Dragons. So, he's always calling you maidenless. Reminds me of White Mask Var from Elden Ring. And I do a lot of build guide videos, so I have to hear Withers say, "Thou art alone. Thou walkest the night alone." I hear that all the time, telling me that I'm maidenless. I get it, man. I get it. I'm working on it. You're going in the A tier regardless, because Withers is an OG. He doesn't care if you pickpocket from him, so you can literally take back all your gold. He does have a really cool interaction in the post game, so in the epilogue, he's really good there. It's Withers. What more can you say? He's a pretty good guy to have around. Actually, fun fact: I have a video on my channel. You can take out Withers. You can kill him. Normally, if you attack him, he survives. But if you sap his intelligence down to 1 and then use absorb intelligence, these are both mind flayer abilities, you can actually leave him as a pile of bones. It takes him out. So yeah, A tier. Yurgir, he's okay. I feel like of all the villains, similar to Balthazar, like okay, but like you can talk him into taking himself out, which is kind of funny. But also, no matter what you do, you can have him show up in Act 3, and he'll show up during the Raphael area, and you can actually have him join your side against Raphael. So, pretty cool. I don't think he has enough to go to B tier, though. Next, we got Isabel. Isabel and Dame Malin, they kind of are a group package. We go to save both of them in Act 2. I would say they're both probably like B tier characters. She actually has one of the most epic moments in the game, so I might put her up in the A tier. In Act 3, whenever you're confronted by Lorokin and he's looking for the Night Song, he wants her, and you can actually tell her that he wants her to go there, and she'll show up and hold him up. She'll hold him up over her head and smash her off his knee. Full on world WWE fighting style. It's hilarious. Isabel, I feel like there should be more to her character. Like, she doesn't have a whole lot it's at Act 2. The kind of story wraps up in Act 3, and then they're out of there. She could go B tier or A tier. I'm just going to put her in A tier for that one moment in Act 3 that I just think is probably one of the coolest moments in the game. Next we have Cazador. And Cazador's evil. I'm a big Astarion fan, so I can't put Cazador too high. He's not the worst character ever, so I will put him in C tier. He is extremely evil to the bone, but you get your sweet revenge with Astarion, so I'll put him into the C tier. Next we have Viconia Devere, another character that comes from Baldur's Gate 2, and she used to be a character you could play as. Now, in Act 3, you can do something stupid. You can turn Shadowheart over to her, which means you lose Shadowheart as a companion, which is rough as you're in Act 3. But she also has she has the best shield in the game, so she's worth it she's worth fighting. That's all I'm saying. I'm gonna put her in the C tier as well as Cazador. Like, they could go a little higher, but they're both just super evil, and they don't really have the redeeming qualities of like Ketheric. Like, Ketheric tries to see the good. Raphael's just super evil, but comically evil. They're just evil. So I'm going to put them in the C tier. I know that's a weird way of ranking evil, but next we have the Sharess Caress. Some people obviously would really like this. I don't really like that kind of stuff in video games. I don't really care about it, so it's not real. I'll put her in the B tier because she's not bad, but not my cup of tea. Could go C tier. And then finally, Omelium. He is the only Mind Flayer that is not, like, evil. And he's trying to find ways for Mind Flayers to not eat brains. He's an OG. I think that he is a pretty good character. I'll put him in the A tier to B, like A tier, B tier. He could go somewhere there. Probably put him in the A tier. A lot of people like him too, so it's a popular pick. Now here it is. In retrospect, we got the Darker, Shadowheart, Gale, Astarion, Wyll, Karlach, Minthara, Minsc, Scratch, and Boo. Don't forget Boo. Owlbear Cub and Ketheric all in the S tier. And even the A tier characters, these are all some of my favorites. So Lae'zel, Halsin, Jaheira, Raphael, Orin, Withers, Dame Aelin, and Omilium. So there it is. Those are the best characters in Baldur's Gate 3 ranked on a tier list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I always have fun doing these tier lists because I love this game a lot, and I always like hearing other people's thoughts on it, so feel free to leave a comment with yours. And if you have any requests for future videos, please let me know as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.